anybody so that you do have those samples. And thank you everybody who graciously put those together. Where we went with that, the most important of the websites, of course, is all that research. So the standards for quality online teaching that are built out at nsqol.org. Same thing for online programs, same thing for online courses. So we had these 3 sets of standards that we dug into and really looked at in depth to understand why they're important for the schools. That raised a lot of questions. And so now we've got the original set of NCPSA standards for schools and organizations and programs that had, already had those in place. We had the middle state standards, which Dan sent in. We did not dig in, and I won't dig into those without Dan and middle states reps being here, but they have those standards. We'll provide them to you because he sent them out for us. We have all of the work that David has done, both in public and charter, working with charters and so on in Arizona. We had the Steve presented ACTS, and then Larry, of course, had the NCPSA standards as well. So for today's session, now we're supposed to be looking at really us being able to cull together and pull together. The goal is when we finish up today is that we'll have some kind of understanding of that framework of where we want to go with those standards. So I suppose the first thing that I want to do is really kind of round robin to see where we are, and your contribution to the conversation as we gather some data. It's really just fact finding is, did you have a set of standards already? Are you good to go? Or did you not know what you didn't know? And now you know you've got to start. Do you need one of us or all of us to help you? And we can begin to look at how we make that transition and provide that help for you, whether it's immediate or whether you're going to look through this, do some more research, and maybe put some work together next year. Or do you want help now, between now and the summer, just so that we can all begin to formulate what we're doing and get some schedules and stuff together. So if I look across, my start is Karen. So Karen, can we begin with you?
Yes, you can. And actually, I'm going to defer this to Dr. Churchill because I'm working with Dr. Churchill at FACTS. So I'm going to defer to this. He has a better handle on it. I'm just getting into this and going to help be a part of a rewrite of our standards of where we are and where we're going. This has been great information, so I'm going to defer to him to answer this question.
So I'll go ahead and jump in here. I'm Cliff Churchill, and I'm the Director of Accreditation for FACTS. And first of all, FACTS would like to express appreciation for all of these resources that have been presented this week. FACTS has had distance standards probably, I'm going to say, since 2005, maybe even a little later, 2010, but they are centered around the mission of FACTS, which would be a faith-based association representing 50,000 some students in Florida. So those standards align with that. What we will do, as Dr. Karen Jeffers is one of our most recent members on our commission on accreditation with FACTS, and so she will be working with me as we then take the resources that have been provided and expand our existing digital distance standards to include so many good elements. I fortunately had the opportunity to work with ABHE, the Association of Biblical Higher Education, serving as chair of accreditation for Christian universities and so on. And the background that I've received with that, with distance standards, has been very helpful. Plus what you have here. Are we going to have something ready to roll out by the time Boston is here? No, but we have a lot of groundwork already happening, and you gave us some good resources, good resource people, and we may be knocking on your door from time to time.
That's great. That's good news. I'm writing notes here furiously, trying to get a picture of where everybody is, and so that we have a picture of the organization as a whole. So let me ask you just one question then, Cliff. So are you, it's great that you've had those and the focus is on faith-based, but now that it's become more mainstream and we're looking now at expanding, do you keep separate standards for your K-12 programs and your colleges?
That's a good question. FACS, Florida Association of Christian Colleges and Schools, does not do accreditation for colleges.
Okay.
It only does K through 12th grade accreditation. The services it provides for colleges who are members would be that their teacher education programs have access to our resources and training materials. And early on in the late 60s, when FACS was organized, it was determined that that's not who we were as far as doing accreditation of colleges. My role in accreditation of colleges is a separate role with the Association of Biblical Higher Education. And I travel around North America from time to time doing that.
That's great. So just put a note aside to reach out to myself or Larry through in that other role. We have a college, a Bible college that is about to seek accreditation and wants guidance, and we'll direct them in your direction, Larry. I think this will be a great resource for us to point that Bible college from North Carolina. They just had reached out, and we have a meeting on Monday. In the other hat that I'm wearing for training with Global Ed and credentialing, but they've all been training and certifying the teachers, but now they need to begin to look at path towards accreditation for Bible college. So we'll send them to you.
What I'll do, Trina, is put my contact information in the chat room for everyone.
Great, that's great. Thank you so much. That's one of the benefits of this as well, is that we get to see those other things and really use that network, the power of the network for everybody else's greater good too. So thank you so much. Tom, you are next on my list as I look at my faces going across.
Yeah, I am the Director of Accreditation for the Association of Classical and Christian Schools.
Mm-hmm.
We accredit K-12 schools in the United States. I would say the philosophy of education represented by our schools really values a community of learners. Like a lot of K-12 schools, when the pandemic hit for a spring, they did what they could to keep online instruction going. But then the next year, our schools were back in session because parents from our schools said, "Thank you very much for what you did last spring. We want our kids in person." So our board meets twice a year in person, but their next meeting is with our annual conference mid-June. And one of the items they are discussing is whether or not our association wants to offer accreditation to online schools. We have a couple of online school members in our association. And so this information is extremely valuable to know where the resources are, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I'm very appreciative.
Well, that's great. So, and if we can help you with any type of assessment or anything like that for these programs, or to even do a preliminary screening, I have some tools and resources as well that maybe, so just reach out if you need me. All right.
Thank you. Will do.
Okay. Next around my circle is Ronald. Ron? Oh, Ron, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yes, we do have standards for online education. Again, much like we just heard, we developed these as schools were coming out of online during the COVID. And we currently have one school that we do accredit and another one online school, 100% online, that is a candidate with us. So we have developed these standards that we have integrated into our general standards because schools may have to come back into online at any time, depending on, you know, the global circumstances. So they are embedded in our general standards, our regular standards, and they, of course, are similar than for the school that we have accredited and for the one that we're working with as a candidate. However, we certainly every summer take our time to review all of our standards and develop any new changes and sort of tweak them. And we certainly will do that with this document once it's approved, and we'll look that over, and we certainly would be you know, willing to share what we can with anyone that is interested in the standards that we do have. They're mainstreamed essentially, and are not distinct or discrete from totally online school. But of course, an online school has a couple standards that some of the requirements that aren't possible if they're totally online, but we've developed those standards and have integrated them.
And thank you for sharing that. I'm going to recommend that you grab a glass of wine or a beer and take a few minutes to, or coffee, whichever, and take a couple of hours if you can. You know, you can speed your way through it, but listen to the conversation back and forth that we've had in the first two sessions, because there was some conversation around fully embedding and having technology standards as you know, blended learning and so on, versus a complete addendum some of the organizations had because of the incredible differences between emergency online education and real distance, or, you know, real education that's designed for not just blended learning, but for full instruction and so on. So if you get a chance, have a listen to what other people were sharing and some of the standards, because it'll make sense then when you see their standards. But thanks for sharing. And then if you have standards that you're willing to share, if you can forward those to Larry or myself,
Yes.
we can have a look at those and get those out to the team, so that for the greater good of everybody, we're able to share some of those things together. So thank you so much.
Sure.
And Cliff, thanks for putting, I see that your contact information is in there.
Welcome.
And it is ABHE, as I copy this down. And that's a great reference for all of us. Appreciate it. David, you are next on my list. So I know we heard from you a lot during the Meet the Experts session yesterday, but really appreciate it if you have any further thoughts or any takeaways for us as a group.
Good morning, all. Not really. Again, right now I'm serving primarily as a K-12 education consultant, and a big part of what I'm doing is working with schools who are trying to develop online and blended learning, and not only assisting them with adhering to the standards that the state requires, but also accreditation standards if they're a private school. And that includes state accountability, which again is driven by those standards, to help them prepare for that. And one big change here as well was about a year ago, they changed the charter application process here to where you can automatically add a virtual school component to your charter now as part of your charter application. So a big part of that then is I go in and help them write that part of the charter application to supplement their application for the online school programs. In the past, it used to be you had to be a charter in good standing and then you did an amendment, but now you can do it all at once when you apply. And as you know, many have no idea when it comes to this, how to do it. And what I've also found is, in addition to the standards, I'm working on guidelines to select an LMS. Most don't even know what to look for when if they want to buy content, they have no idea what to even look for when they go to shop for content. And so one of the things I do as well is trying to work with them on the tools and the learning resources and what they want to look for in an LMS when they're considering actually outsourcing their content. And any way I can support the effort, please reach out.
Thank you so much. And that, Ron, that was something else that we talked about in those other sessions, was really understanding the differences between third-party providers outsourcing your teaching and instruction versus creating and doing those things and having separate sets of standards. So it may be worthwhile for you to get a chance to just run back and have a look at it. So thank you. Thanks, David.
You're welcome.
Wanda, you're in the hot seat. You're up next. You're on mute.
My first question before I make my statement is how can we access the recordings?
Larry?
That's a good question. I've got them up in the cloud. And so what we're going to do is once we have all three of these, I'll download those and put them on the NCPSA website.
Okay. Okay. We over the last year, we've been in the process of trying to develop some standards for accrediting distance learning school. And so this has, I've been anticipating this since our meeting in January to kind of help clarify some of my thinking and some of my questions. And so this has been hugely helpful. And the resources are just really great. Some things I had thought about, other things, it helped me to bring those into focus. I'm hoping, we're hoping to have our standards ready by the end of June. So I'm hoping to bring somewhat of a draft to NCPSA in Boston, and would appreciate some input.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll be available. I'm going to be there. I'll be there early and I'll stay through the conference. So, if you want me to have a look at them or you want to email them to me ahead and then we can have a conversation about them when we get there, I'm happy to do that as well for you.
Yeah.
All right. James, you are next on my list.
Let me unmute myself here. So the FCCPSA, because we've always worked with, we're exclusively in Florida at this point, but we've always worked with a variety of schools that, and some of those schools obviously are your traditional 5-day-a-week programs, but we have a lot of programs that have some blended options where they're with a teacher in a traditional classroom 2 or 3 days a week, and then they're doing some work at home, kind of a combination of a virtual and traditional class. We don't have a lot. We only have 2 schools that are completely virtual. And so we do have one standard that we've added to our regular set of standards that deal specifically with those distance learning programs or blended programs. Most of what we've done in the past, and this is part of the discussion that we've been having, which is why this is the timing of this is so beneficial. With everything that went on with COVID, we got a number of schools that, did not set out to have some blended options or some part-time options, but they did during COVID. And some of those schools are now debating on how to keep some of those programs or whether to do away with them completely. And so it's becoming clear that we need a more clear set of standards, sort of like ACTS does, where you've got all your regular 12 standards, if you will, but then you've got a separate workbook that basically deals with, if you got a blended program, these are the additional details that we need. What we've done in the part of our standards that deals with teaching and learning, if they've got a traditional program and a blended program, we basically have them do that workbook twice, once from the perspective of this is the answer and the way we do it for the traditional program. This is the way we do it for the blended program. Obviously, it's going to have some things that are similar, but the evaluation is going to be different and some other parts of that. But I think long term, the better model is going to have a separate workbook that is clearly focused on just a blended program or just a virtual program. Because a lot of these things in the traditional program, where we're bringing in a lot of the resources that we learned to use during the COVID period, those are becoming part of the stuff that we're evaluating anyway in a traditional program. So that's kind of where our discussion is at this point in time. I don't know that we have a full framework for that, but we've got several workshops scheduled over the summer to work on some of those, and we've made some drafts. And so hopefully before the next the meeting that's coming up, we'll have a more refined draft, at least at that point. It may not be finished, but we'll have a more refined draft.
Yeah, no, that's great. And our goal is not to, put extra work or any burdens on anybody, but to give you the resources that you need, because we know that most people are in this work right now.
Right.
And anything we're providing, we hope is so that you can then take that and use it with your own work and make your own progress with it. So I'm glad that we've been of help. And if you need anything else, or you do need a second set of eyes, that's what we're here for. All right.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. And I'm glad we're going to be able to post the videos. I got pulled out on Wednesday's session. Had an issue with a school and a student, so I didn't get to see most of Wednesday. And so I'll be looking forward to those videos so I can go back and go through those and kind of finish that comparison of some of the other standards, because that everything that we did on Monday was very helpful, and I'm sure Wednesday had a lot of valuable stuff that I missed. So I'm looking forward to be able to get back to that.
That's great. Thanks so much. Yeah, Wednesday we had a lot more conversation from the different groups sharing what they're doing as associations, and I found it very informative. I really liked some of the way I think it was Steve had pulled things out as in ACTS. They had pulled out addendum rather than making people duplicate work.
Right.
There were add-ons, like extra steps. If you had a blended learning school, you did traditional plus. And so, that model of that thinking, that rationale makes sense from a practitioner standpoint. It makes it easier for the school. So I think there was a lot in the Wednesday session.
Yeah.
Larry, were you thinking of something else?
No, I'm fine.
Oh, okay. I saw you lean forward, so I thought, okay. I think Larry was just leaning forward and telling me, stop telling people drink a glass of wine, because he won't drink his wine.
No, I was just checking to see who's here.
Okay, I got you. I always say, take a glass of wine, sit and watch the movie, and Larry goes, I don't tell people to drink wine. I don't drink wine.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So thanks so much, James. Joshua, you're up next.
Okay. So I'm also looking forward. I missed Monday's session, and I feel like that was one of the most important sessions. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that video, getting caught up there. But then seeing all those resources on Wednesday was fantastic. As an organization, we've been discussing online standards for about 3 years now, a little bit before COVID. We have, and it was always very overwhelming, and we've kind of never completed the task or really gotten too far with it. And then COVID came, and, everything went to this kind of blended environment. And so now it's become very prevalent, and we've been trying to move towards that more and more, but everybody's so busy, so we haven't been able to really focus on it. We've grabbed the MSA and the Cognia standards and kind of tried to look at those and see what we could do to start working with them. And I think everybody just kept getting a little too overwhelmed with all their workloads. And now NCPSA has brought you on and had these seminars, and we've been so excited. And this has really been the resource we've been looking for. And I think that moving forward after this, we're really going to be able to accelerate our ability to get those standards out. So I'm really excited for getting this going now, especially with all those resources you're providing.
That's great. And again, if I can help you in any way, Larry and I will both be there. I'm not sure, David, if you're going to be at the meeting at the end of May, but we're all available virtually as well. And I think
I'll be there. I will be there
as well,
this
David.
year.
Yeah, David actually will be presenting there on Wednesday also.
Oh, great. That's great.
And Josh is in Miami, so he's not far from you.
Oh, yes, you're only an hour from me, Josh. If you need.
Hey, all right.
I'm right there. I'm right there.
We'll go grab lunch one day and go over the standards.
Absolutely, no problem at all. But that's the goal, is that together we will reduce the workload on any one group or any individual. There's just, like I said earlier, there's no point reinventing the wheel. This stuff's been around and we have the resources and the knowledge. And believe me, I think Larry would second this, but having been in this end of the industry for 2 decades, I've made every mistake and know every mistake, and I can't stop you from making them, but I can certainly say, yeah, you might want to rethink this. So, that's
and what you said on Wednesday about, going into the almost like the psychology of it, where you were, and the teacher aspect and the student and the parent, there's so many different facets to this type of learning that you don't think of in the traditional brick and mortar. That's really opened my my mind and my eyes to what really is involved in providing these type of standards.
Yeah, it really is a safety net for your schools. Schools may think it's a burden or taking on extra work, but if you think about the, mom's right there, or dad, or whomever is right there, you are suddenly exposed in a way that a traditional school is not. And so putting those protocols in place and just thinking people through the rationale behind it is always, you'll garner support when they realize why there's a standard in place or what the value is behind it. So any help at all, I'm right here if you need anything. iPad 6. Oh, Clay, you were right. iPad 6 was a real person, and you're next on my screen here. So Clay, can you?
That must be.
That's you.
That must be me.
Yep.
That must be you,
Yeah.
Pastor Airwood.
Yes, it is. To this point, we do not have separate standards for distance learning because we have no schools that are built around distance learning. But we are seeing the need for that. Obviously, the pandemic pushed some of us to places where we hadn't been before. Yeah. And so we have set aside a schedule so that we could get to that point. So obviously we're excited to see this. We have no schools that even approach the threshold of being top heavy in distance learning. Most of our schools are traditional classroom Christian schools, at least our accredited schools. So we're excited about what we're going to be able to put in place, but we do not have anything now other than what is built, what we've been able to go back and add in or build into our traditional standards.
All righty, and I think Larry is certainly an expert on that as well. I've done a lot of work with Catholic schools and building standards around for Catholic schools and Episcopal schools. Former superintendent of an Episcopal school network, or head of the president of the organization. But Larry has also, obviously, with the Seventh-day Adventists and so on, is able to support you in some of that work too.
Sure.
Just call us if you need us. All right.
Okay.
Laura, you are up next on my list.
Hi, I've been lurking. I'm executive director of TEPSAC, which is there are 19 accrediting commissions that are recognized in Texas, and we've had discussions about this. They're all doing this their own way, but I was just curious about what best practices were and what the conversation was. So I'm just listening. I don't really even have any work to do after this. So.
Oh, that's great. That's good. Well, if you need any support or you need any help as each individual organization is pulling theirs together in the same way NCPSA is, if you need a similar workshop like this for your organizations, or if you need any kind of support on helping them to evaluate the work they're doing individually or collectively, then happy to be of assistance to you. Not that we want to create more work for you, but happy to support you in your work. Larry?
Thank you.
I was just going to comment, Laura, that what we've decided in NCPSA is that we're not going to micromanage our organizations, just like you don't in TEPSAC, but yet to require them, if they have distance education programs, they must think through the process of having separate standards. So building a standard in the TEPSAC that says, if you have distance ed, you must have standards, and then let them work through what those standards are. That's where we've decided to land on that issue, if that's helpful.
It is. I think all of our commissions that do distance learning do have standards, but it probably would be helpful to formalize that. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think not even it's defining, what we looked at on the first 2 days here is defining, what do you mean by distance learning? So is it, they're all traditional schools, but now all of a sudden, 100% of the content that they're using is coming from a third party, or they're using all digital assets in the classroom. So instead of your Houghton Mifflin or your Sadler or textbook series, now we're using all the digital versions of those textbooks and an iPad. Well, things like that, you're not providing distance education for kids outside of the brick and mortar perhaps, but you have changed the nature of your delivery. Your modality has changed. And so there are safety protocols and there are things there that need to be addressed. And that's kind of what we were looking at yesterday. So not that your organization would, but that you would need to have something in play that says, like to Larry's point, that, this is actually a change. It's, it is a shift in how we're delivering, even in a traditional building. And you'd be surprised when, when all of you start digging, if you were to start doing a survey in your schools, you might actually be really surprised at how untraditional our traditional schools now are as a result of this. They're not using the textbooks, they're using the digital version. They're not using so much paper and pencil. Now they've got centers with iPads, or they've got everybody using, the computer and so on. And so that just speaks to a whole different dynamic. Is all the homework being submitted online? There are things like that that really just change. You are still physically going in a building. You are still physically with the teacher in the room. But if that curriculum delivery switched modalities and is not going back, you've even changed how a kid who's out sick can access. He doesn't have to wait and go get a folder anymore. He's got it online. So, now you've opened up the doors. That is actually a form of blended learning. And so, if those things, if some surveys are always great, I love to mine for this. I love to find out, but you might be surprised how traditional is no longer your version of traditional, but it has morphed unwillingly or unthinkingly or unplanned as a result of what we're forced to do through the pandemic. So, just food for thought is keep refining and redefining, the model of everybody 100% hands-on with the textbook is probably no longer there. You're going to find somewhere those digital resources that you bought during the pandemic are still being used in some form. And so you've actually morphed over into some form of blending technology, integrating technology in the classroom, even if you're not delivering outside to students full-time or part-time outside. So with that comes parent exposure to content and so on. With that comes communication issues that need to be addressed and all of the things we talked about yesterday. So again, Laura, if you need anything at all, we're happy to support you in any way. Let's see, Joanne, you are next on my list.
Thanks. So we're kind of in a similar situation to some of the others. We do not accredit online schools right now, but we created actually a standalone virtual learning standard during the pandemic for schools to be able to have some framework for what was expected. It's, again, we're in that kind of half in, half out zone at this moment of will we or won't we, take on the idea of accrediting online schools. So this, participating here these past few days has been helpful in looking at just those things that you were mentioning, Trina, about, what are some additional standards that we would need to implement if we were to go in that direction. So before we before we created the virtual learning piece, we did look at those national standards documents and take a look at those things. So we've got, we've got those resources, but we're happy to have this sharing of others that are kind of deeper into it than we are right now.
Well, thanks for sharing, Joanne. It's always, it's great. It's a great response, but when you do things as a response to a pandemic or to an emergency situation, and you put that framework in place, we all do the best we can, but coming out of it, it's really good to pause and to say, what's that decision we're making now that we are looking at a new normal. And so I appreciate that was one set. You put a framework together to help them, but now, are we going to differentiate between, and that's really the question, isn't it? Differentiate between a school that incorporates technology and still call that traditional versus a school that allows some form of distance and call that blended, and then a fully online school. Are we going to credit all three variations? And are all three of those under one set of standards, or like, was it ACTS? I'm looking to see if I had Steve here. Yeah. Was it, is it an addendum if you've got, one level and a completely separate application if it's a virtual school? So lots of food for thought. And I said, same advice to everybody else. We're here if you need us, and happy to support you or provide any extra help. Carol says, Carol Smith.
Yep, I'm Carol Smith, and I am coming to you from the UK. And that's why I've kept my video off, because it's my supper time here. So
where are you? Where are you, Carol?
I'm in London,
lovely.
visiting family. So, and I've wanted to join these meetings because we're seeking to join NCPSA this year. And we will probably have a charter school to accredit in the spring. And that charter school is doing some blended learning because of COVID. So we have to have a standard in place for that. So I'm here to get as much information as I can to get that standard up and in place.
Great. Anything that we can do to help you? Will you be back? Will you be here for the June meeting?
No, I scheduled this trip anticipating the June meeting to be in June.
Gotcha. And I'm still calling it the June meeting. Yeah, sorry.
It got moved to May, so I'm stuck. But
yeah. But well, when you get back, if you need anything at all or anything prior to, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help you and support you, and anything we can do to help with that. Since you're going to need the standard in place for the upcoming year. If I can help you accelerate that work, that would be great.
Thank you.
And enjoy your holiday. My gosh, I can't wait to get back to London. I'm from Belfast in Northern Ireland originally. That's where I grew up. I went to Queen's University, and family immigrated here to Florida, and I followed, of course, but love going home all the time.
Good.
I have Joseph next. I think, Joseph, you're actually the last one, and then I'll circle back around to Larry. Joseph Jablisco.
Yes, I'm with FCCPSA, and you already heard from Jim, our colleague, who's the director of K-12 standards. And we really appreciate the sharing of these standards and to enhance our process. So thank you for your availability, and looking forward to reviewing the Zoom calls and on the website to get more information. So thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for sharing. I think it really helps, when everybody realizes we're all about the same, having the same conversations. And so that's why sharing and getting together a lot of times really, really helps the groups realize you're not in this alone. And any resources or any help that the team can provide, it's there for you. Larry, I think you had some thoughts or some follow-up.
Just a couple of things as we wrap up here. I think we'd also be interested in trying to help you to know how to do a virtual accreditation visit. We've had lots of questions on that. from, I see thumbs up from Josh there. That's another issue that we didn't have to deal with, 4 years ago. We didn't have to worry about doing virtual visits. I visited a school one time, and if it was a virtual visit, we'd have been in trouble because we found out that that school was in such financial trouble. They were photocopying, they had bought one textbook and they photocopied that textbook for all the students. Well, we may not have found that out had we not been there in person. So the way we operate virtually in accreditation is also an issue that we might be able to have another session just on that, if that's helpful for people. I know Clay and I both, we spend a lot of time brainstorming on how what resources we can bring to this group that are beneficial. And I think this has kind of scratched an itch for many of you. You seem to, if we have 15, 16 people here every time, that means that it must be beneficial to somebody. What other issues can we do these kinds of programming for you on? Are there other issues that we can address? We're happy to do that. I know that Trina has resources at her disposal for online education that we're happy to make available to this group.
So everybody knows, the upcoming agenda will go out next week, and a big part of it's focused on distance education. And it's also, we have speakers like David Reed coming to speak and address these issues, mainly just because I've gotten so much feedback from associations needing this right now. So I think it's timely, and it's good we have these meetings scheduled for this week. And I think in less than 2 weeks, we'll be able to address some of these things and some of the questions you have face to face beyond the commission meeting.
That's great. I see Ron put in the ISTE standards as well.
Yes.
And there are a number of those out there. ISTE is a great organization. We have INACOL got taken over by the group Evergreen. Let me think, what is their name now? David, do you remember the new name for the INACOL group?
Aurora.
Aurora. Well, no. Aurora, Aurora is the new name, but they do anybody who's into the project-based learning and so on. But the group that took over the standards end is actually still owned by Evergreen, and they have those, they have annual conferences and stuff.
I see. Okay.
I also,
go ahead, Ron, go ahead.
yes, I also put in the chat a connection to Quality Matters. Now, they're predominantly a higher education organization that actually certifies online programs for universities, but they also have a K through 12 strategy committee. Most, I think the top 2 people in that organization or in that committee are from the North Carolina virtual public school program or organization. So they may be additional resources for organizations and NCPSA that are going to develop a set of standards along with the NCPSA standards, of course. But again, just additional resources and people with expertise.
Oh yeah, QM is great. They started, it's funny, but my old company, we were the first ones ever to get 100 points. I have to brag because I didn't do the work. Obviously, other people did the work, experts did the work. The first ones to get 100 points on the training of teacher programs using the QM rubrics. And so what they do is they take your content and your course alignments and make sure that you've got an introduction, you've got a syllabus, you've got so on. And those are actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Ronald, because those are some of the classes that we actually teach as and that we have available for your schools and for your leaders. So when we get to the May meeting, Larry has been training principals and training college professors in some of the coursework that we use outside of NCPSA. and that the NCPSA relationship has available to your schools and your leaders and your principals, that we can certainly provide and give that free. And one of them is actually training them on use of the QM standards, so that they can see those rubrics, understand what those rubrics are, and then that will help your principals and your building level managers to actually really understand how to evaluate courses and how to evaluate materials. So one of the things David talked about was, people not even knowing how to pick an LMS. So one of the courses that we do is actually an analysis of, understanding resources and making sure those resources are aligned to the quality matter standards. So, there are 100 LMSs out there. There are, 1,000 people selling content, but these are the checklists, and literally use this as a worksheet when you're evaluating and assessing content. Does it do this? Does it do this? Does it have this? And so really helping people to learn how to select high quality products is a key skill. So thank you for bringing that up. That is
Define we.
Sorry?
You said we have this and we have that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Global Ed. I presume that everybody knows my other hat is Global Ed in the adult learning credentialing organization. But we'll have a lot of resources there for you free as well. Everybody can put their teachers in, and we can share more about that. I think we have something on the agenda when we get there in May. But it's really an exciting time for us to be helping schools meet their mission. And, a lot of it is stuff that is out there available, but when schools and organizations don't know where to begin, it's aggregating all that for them, pulling it together and saying, here's a course on how to do all these things.
Global Ed is the only organization that I know of that has an endorsement, a teaching endorsement in how to teach online.
Yeah.
And that's a K-12 and higher ed course. And it's been extremely beneficial to many, and we can make that available to NCPSA as well.
And actually, some of the organizations here are using it. So
Yes.
we have schools in Korea, we have schools from Accreditation International, and other schools that have been using this. So let me ask you this, and we're wrapping up here now. Do we want to add another session either before the end of May, before the May session, or after that, or even during it? Do you want to know how to conduct a virtual visit, a virtual site visit of a traditional, and then how to conduct an assessment or an evaluation of a non-traditional or hybrid and virtual school?
I would love that.
Okay, so both, or you want to, like, how to be a virtual evaluator, or how
I think
to assess?
how to do a virtual visit for a traditional school would be the most helpful right now for us personally.
Okay, all right. So, that'll be everything from how to set up the drop boxes, how to do secure uploads of documents, where to do that, the resources that are out there for those kind of things, how to evaluate them, how to do interviews, all that. So we've got that process, Larry. We can do that. And then if anybody wants to actually know how to evaluate and how to assess online programs and virtual programs, we have a bunch of rubrics out there. David even, I think, shared one of those in our conversations yesterday. David, I think you had one from Arizona, right?
Yeah, I do have a rubric that they use to evaluate programs.
Okay. So we'll make those available. I'm looking at the chat. Aurora requires a login. I can get access to anything in Aurora that we decide that we need. So we can pull that. Actually, that used to be, those of you who are in the North Carolina area, you probably remember Bruce Friend from Inaco was vice president and one of the co-founders of that organization. And he's now with the, he was on the state board for charter schools, statewide virtual school and so on. So a lot of connections there too, if anybody needs those kind of resources. North Carolina, of course, like Florida, was one of the first in online education and really pushing for support for their schools. All right, any last questions or anything? Okay, Tom, thanks. All right, so we'll put those two workshops together, how to do an online visit for brick and mortar, and then how to evaluate and do an online visit for an online school. All right. Hearing no further questions, this meeting, no, I can't adjourn the meeting. This is Clay's meeting. I was gonna go bang the gavel. Clay, you're on mute.
You can adjourn it.
All right, guys, anybody needs anything, don't hesitate to reach out, but it is Friday afternoon. I love you all, and I'm going now for a cup of tea.
Hey, Trina, before everybody goes, I'm going to post the scoring rubric link if anybody wants it real quick.
Just send it to me.
There he
and
is.
I'll put
Okay,
it
yeah,
up on-
okay, that's great. I'll do that then.
Yeah, just send it to me.
And then they have a copy of it, okay? Everybody
Right.
take care.
Thanks. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
Bye.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you guys in a week.
Yes, we appreciate it.
See you soon.